You're listening to Retail Disrupted, a podcast that explores the latest industry developments and the trends that will shape how we shop in the future. I'm your host, Natalie Berg. Today, we are going to be talking about quick commerce, sometimes referred to as Q-commerce, or rapid grocery delivery, or on-demand delivery, or 10-minute delivery. So many different names. I'm going to do my best to stick with quick commerce on today's episode. And I know many of you will already be familiar with the idea of quick commerce, but for those of you who aren't, just a very brief recap. This was a new channel that emerged during the pandemic. It caused a huge amount of disruption. And I think from the public's perspective, there was a general sense of awe that you could order groceries on your phone and then literally within minutes, they turn up on your doorstep. Many of us at the time thought this is too good to be true. And those of us in the retail industry very aware of the costs involved in delivering groceries and delivering those perishable items. It's an incredibly capital intensive model. There's a huge amount of cost and a huge amount of complexity when you're delivering groceries. And then to throw in that promise of delivering within 10 to 15 minutes, that puts a huge amount of pressure on a business. And the other problem is there were so many of these new entrants, so many, we had Getirs and GoPuff and Zap, and, they were just popping up out of nowhere. And so we saw this inevitable wave of consolidation. We saw cost cutting. We saw a general scaling back and exiting markets and layoffs and a general sort of tweaking and adapting of business models in order to survive. There's also been a lot of collaboration, and that's what we're going to be talking about on today's show. We're going to be looking at the news that Uber Eats has just announced a new partnership with Getir, the Turkey-based rapid grocery player. Now, a little fun fact for you before we move on to the news. Getir in Turkish means to bring. So there you go. But the Uber Eats and Getir partnership is interesting. It's pan-European, and how it will work, well, Uber Eats users will simply have access to over 2,000 Getir products, and delivery, again, will be made within a matter of minutes. Now, joining me to dig into this news is George Knott, technology editor at The Grocer. George, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. Now, before we dive into the world of quick commerce, George, do you want to share a few words about yourself and what you do at The Grocer?
Sure. So I'm been at The Grocer for 3 years now, and I'm technology editor there, which is a really exciting sort of job, actually. So I cover anything e-commerce, anything in-store technology, anything that basically one of my colleagues thinks this is vaguely technological. I'll send it to George's way. Anything tech, but definitely over the past few years, a lot on quick commerce and the courier guys, the Deliveroos and Uber Eats and so on. Always something to cover, always something new.
Yeah, that's it, isn't it? It's such a fast-moving space. It's never a quiet moment, I'm sure, for
That's
you.
right.
Now, George, I know you covered this piece in an article for The Grocer, which, by the way, was very helpful when I was prepping my thoughts for today's conversation. So thank you for that. Perhaps just for our listeners, you can just talk us through the Uber Eats Getir news in a little bit more detail. So what is the logic behind this collaboration? And more generally, what are these businesses looking to achieve?
Sure. So Getir, as you know, is the dark store player, the rapid grocer, and their whole model is keep goods in sort of dark stores, in little warehouses, close to where lots of people live, and they have their own app and their own couriers to, when someone orders it, they'll fulfill it and as quick, in about 20 minutes or so. And Uber Eats obviously is the huge platform for everything food. And they've been moving more into grocery, definitely since the pandemic, sort of beyond your takeaways, uh, struck up partnerships with big supermarkets, and have their couriers delivering. So these are sort of, they definitely were very competitive business models. I mean, this is getir. Definitely when they first arrived, they were sort of the Uber Eats killer almost. Um, and now they've struck a partnership. And how it works is, so you're an Uber Eats app user, you go on, and getir basically appears like a shop front, same as your local convenience store or supermarket would. You can see their selection, you order. The difference is, in this case, is it's getir's couriers actually for bringing it to your door, unlike other sort of grocers on Uber Eats. Um, so yeah, why have they come together? I mean, from getir's point of view, um, obviously the shop front of Uber Eats app is huge, and you know, in huge, multiple times more users than they could dream of, really. Um, so there's that. And from Uber Eats' point of view, I mean, it's like, why not? Like this, I think from Uber's point of view, it's like, this is another store on our app. Great, like, fine.
Just more choice for the customer, right?
Yeah. I
Why
mean, it's
not, as you
no,
say?
they get their commission. They don't have to worry about actually delivering it. Sure, like, yeah,
Yeah, it seems like a no-brainer from an Uber Eats perspective. And I
yeah,
guess from a Getir's perspective, I think it is really interesting. And I like the phrase they were initially, designed to be an Uber Eats killer because I've written an article, I've written, various pieces about quick commerce. And I think something I was initially, when I'm talking about the arrival of the Getirs and the Gorillas and
yeah,
Zaps and I can't even remember. I mean, there's been so much consolidation in this sector. It's hard to keep up with who's still around. But,
yeah,
kept saying that they were disrupting the disruptors by trying to take, 20, 30-minute delivery and doing that in 10, 15 minutes. And um, obviously, we know there's been a kind of quick commerce boom and bust, which maybe we'll get into in a little bit more detail later in the conversation. But I guess, do you think, just to kind of ask, sort of, just to kind of address this point early on in the conversation, do you think we need 10, 15-minute delivery? Or do you think that from a customer's point of view and also from a business's point of view, trying to manage the costs, because we know that this is not this is a capital intensive business model. Do you think that maybe if we'll be settling on more kind of a 30-minute delivery rather than 10, do you think that's more achievable?
yeah. Well, the sort of the thing that none of these rapid grocers say anymore is actually that 10-15 minutes isn't really 10 and 15 minutes anymore. It's That was their USP at the start, and it's
Mm,
definitely drifted, and we're now talking like 20-25 minutes. When they launched, they were all about that sort of getting that number as low as you could, and that was what made them exciting and what made people think, well, look, Uber Eats delivery 35 minutes, that seems slow versus 10 minutes. So they've all sort of drifted up. At the same time, delivering Uber Eats are sort of like ratcheted down, so there's some sort of meeting in the middle, around 20 to 30 minutes. Um, do consumers need it? It's tougher. Like, what's 10 minutes really? Like, I'm not sure. Like, the sort of the big use case of the rapid grocers was always, well, two main ones. So there's like, uh, late night, you need nappies. Fine, like, I get that. And maybe
crisis.
yeah, like 10 minutes
You need
would
it
make
now.
maybe a bit of difference.
Yeah.
And the other one was like, all right, so you're cooking dinner and your pasta's on, and everything's warming up, and you've not got this spice that you need. You get it. I'm not so convinced by that one, really. Like, definitely when I'm cooking, if I haven't got something, I'll work around it. I won't bother. Um, so yeah, I mean, it's tough. What is 10 minutes? Like, I don't know. I think 25 minutes is fast enough for most people. Like,
Mm.
it's still probably quicker than you could nip down your local corner shop. So if that's still the case, then, I don't think it makes a huge amount of difference. And besides, 10 minutes isn't really available in reality anymore.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. It is interesting to think about what shopping missions they were initially catering to, and I think you hit it right on the head. It's that kind of crisis shopping mission,
Mm.
also food to go, and maybe to a lesser extent, top up shopping. Because when you think about it from a grocery commerce perspective, for a long time we've been able to do that weekly shop online, but we could never do that top up shop online, and that's sort of where, as we've seen in the past decade, obviously the convenience stores, the Sainsbury's locals, the Tesco Express stores, they served a purpose there. Increasingly, the discounters were filling that role of that top up shop. But I think it is interesting how all of these disruptive brands came in and thought, hang on, let's bring this top up shop into the digital era and let's see what we can do. So yeah, really interesting. It's just the huge, incredible cost that comes with it, isn't it?
Yeah,
so
that's it. I mean, like, you got, all the rapid grocers, they've spent so much on marketing, like ridiculous amounts. Like, they sponsor football teams, like it's crazy. They're probably regretting those sort of big deals that they made in the heady days of 2021 now. But and sort of, it's sort of symbolic that now they're going on Uber Eats because obviously they can tap that marketing and their brand presence and so on, rather than the expensive work of trying to build it themselves.
Yeah, exactly. And I think in Getir's case, as we've seen with a lot of these businesses that have kind of gone through that boom and bust cycle, they're undergoing massive layoffs globally. They have exited. Let's see, they've exited Italy, Spain, Portugal, France, and interestingly, this partnership with Uber Eats is actually being described as a pan-European partnership, and they have confirmed that they'll be launching in Germany and the Netherlands, which I think are two markets where both Uber Eats and Getir currently operate. So that makes sense, and it's kind of quick win there. Um, but I'm curious to get your views on this. Do you think, we're seeing, months after, literally just a few months after the announcement of exiting some of these key European markets, they're now committing to Uber Eats. So do you think this is a more sustainable, financially sustainable way to move forward? Do you think collaboration is really the way forward for these guys?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's a tough one. You could see this new. I mean, and it's not just Katir on Uber Eats. I mean, GoPuff's on Deliveroo, GoPuff's on Uber, Zap is on both as well. Getir are partnered with Just Eat, so this is like a trend. You could see it as, I mean, possibly like a bit of an existential crisis, and that,
Mm.
if you're you're just a shop front on Uber Eats, you're essentially the same as a convenience store. Obviously, you're a dark store, so there's advantages and disadvantages there. So, what are you now if you don't expect customers to have to use your app? Um, in some cases, they are leveraging the sort of Uber Eats and Deliveroo's own couriers. So, you know you're essentially just a warehouse that's on one of these much bigger courier platforms. So I don't know. I mean, it makes sense. It makes good sense to, tap the huge customers of the bigger platforms, but I think they perhaps risk, like, what are they for? Why not? Why even have your own app?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a tricky one for them.
It is. I agree. I think it is a little bit of an existential crisis because I'm just thinking from a customer's point of view. If I'm going onto Uber Eats and I have the choice of Tesco, Sainsbury's, Co-op, Asda, Waitrose, Iceland, these are all brands that are on Uber Eats.
Yeah.
What's going to make me choose Getir? What's going to make me choose GoPuff? Especially, you go onto Uber Eats because you need it now. So if you have access to all of these well-known brands who have a very clear value proposition, right? You know what Waitrose is about. You know what Iceland is about. So I don't know. I struggle to really see whether or not they have enough brand equity to exist on a platform like Uber Eats. I don't know. I
Yeah, I
suppose.
mean that's the thing. It's like the other thing with Uber Eats and Deliveroo is it's really easy. Say you need milk, you search for milk, and it's really easy to compare uh, prices. Like
Oh,
you
okay.
can,
That's interesting.
you can see where milk, milk in that's close enough. I can buy it from there, there, or there. Um, so they've sort of led themselves down this path of having to be really price competitive, which when you're offering 10-minute delivery, that whole thing, like, people pay for that convenience and fair enough. But now I mean, and they are trying, like Getir and GoPuff, I think, are both price matching sort of Tesco Express stores and I think more recently Tesco Superstores. Um, a very sort of tricky thing for them to continue, obviously because they're losing margin and the rest of it. So yeah, it's sort of it's made you know they gain customers, they gain volume, but they do perhaps erode their own margin there. Yeah,
Yeah, I guess it's a bit of a race to the bottom then, isn't it? Especially considering that, I mean, to a certain extent, I think consumer demand has dried up for this kind of service. Comparing where we are now to where we were in the pandemic, where we really relied so heavily on grocery commerce, but
yeah,
also funding is dried up as well. So, and those two are linked, of course. But
yeah. I mean, the other
uh,
thing, sorry to
no, you go ahead. Go ahead.
the other one was like, I mean, the Getir, for example, their wholesaler is the same as Co-ops, and Co-op provide a lot of like own label products to them. GoPuff are working with Morrison's on lots of own label products as well. So it's sort of like, well, what is their their range isn't that special. It's just a sort of normal range with a lot of products from supermarkets. So again, like why shop at a Getir or GoPuff store versus just directly with a supermarket? I mean, to their credit, Zap, which is definitely a much smaller player, but doing okay in the UK. They've said, all right, well, we're the sort of luxury, high end. So you can get like I think like Louis Vuitton handbags and Moet and Chandon and Apple iPhones
Really?
on Zap. Yeah, so that makes sense. That's
Wow.
like okay, well that's a thing. Like that's a something perhaps the others don't offer. But
And
yeah,
you
when
need
you
that urgently within 20. I don't
well,
understand that. That's
well, there you go. Yeah, yeah. I don't know. I mean,
um,
if there's champagne at short notice, it's never a bad thing.
yeah.
Yeah,
Very niche, but there you go.
yeah,
Oh, that's so interesting. Okay. Yeah, I think it is interesting just how Uber Eats has sort of become, I don't know, it seems like they're sort of becoming the platform of choice. And I just wonder if other retailers, it's kind of, I guess it's a little bit like, observing more and more retailers get comfortable selling on Amazon's platform, where in the beginning it's like, oh, we're frenemies. I don't want to go there. And then as it starts to build scale and it becomes the place where your shoppers are, then, that kind of attracts more retailers. So yeah, it's interesting. But then on the topic of Amazon, actually, is interesting. And I know you cover this as well, that Amazon finally launched on Deliveroo. And of course, they've got a minority stake in Deliveroo. So there's a lot happening in this space. I mean, having not been keeping up to it on a daily basis, I kind of came at it and did a little bit of digging, and I was surprised to see that it's still, it's still going, this whole rapid grocery delivery sector, and it's obviously had to adapt a lot to changes in how we shop. But I guess my question to you is, do you think that the response from traditional supermarkets has been enough? Because we've seen them go on to Uber Eats, but we're also seeing Tesco, for example, expand its Whoosh, its own rapid grocery delivery service. So, what do you make of the traditional supermarket response to this trend?
yeah. I think at um, at first when sort of rapid grocery came about, I mean, and probably from you know journalists like me, sort of trying to make it into a bit of a you know head to head sort of thing. But I think they sort of viewed it with curiosity, and I mean, of course, all this time, like through the pandemic, the supermarkets had already gone on to Deliveroo and Uber Eats, because they couldn't provide the slots during the pandemic and so on. And those partnerships continued. So they sort of get the value of, app-based shopping, I guess, and um, yeah, and then introduce their own. I mean, for every Tesco Whoosh, there's similar projects that have started and stopped. Um, it's a tough one. Like it is hard. Like if they don't have their own network of riders, you got or couriers, you got to build that. The whole fulfillment piece is tricky. But Tesco are doing great, and there's some research. Most Whoosh orders arrive within like around between 20 and 30 minutes anyway. So it's I think initially it was like 1 hour was the time promise. That's come down. You got Ocado Zoom, which sort of is hitting similar sort of time. But it's easier to go on a delivery or Uber Eats. The riders are there. You just have to pick from store. It's very simple. Obviously, you lose that commission, but if you're, tapping customers that maybe wouldn't shop at Tesco.com, then it's no bad thing really. So, and at the same time, you got Morrison's and Waitrose that have gone in partnerships with Deliveroo Hop, which is sort of Deliveroo's own dark store based rapid grocery thing. And that's sort of different in that it's they're sort of the supplier to it's more like a true partnership rather than just being on the delivery app. So yeah, that's sort of an easy way for them to play in the space as well. And seems to be doing. I mean, they Waitrose and Morrison's are sort of keep opening Hop dark stores, so it must be going pretty well for them. I mean, there sort of benefits for them as well as the sort of volume is, Morrison's or Waitrose. It's quite difficult to reach that. Perhaps some inner city areas, if you haven't got stores, if retail space is expensive, um, you can sort of more easily tap those demographics that you might not otherwise reach. So, a good play for them and worth obviously the commission loss. Um, so yeah, I think supermarkets are playing in the space. They're doing it cautiously, but they didn't sort of jump on the hype train and try to do too much too soon. I mean, Tesco did partner with Gorillas, rest in peace. But that sort of project ended, and no doubt they took the learnings from that to apply to Whoosh. So, um,
Yeah.
yeah, I think it's sort of easier for them now to enter rapid grocery through partnerships, rather than thinking we need to build our own getir.
Yeah, that makes sense. And as you say, yeah, they will have learned a lot and taken that and moved it on to the next thing as retailers have learned to become so agile in recent years.
Hmm.
Well, I'm just curious around. It's so interesting what you're saying about how it just shows how much experimentation there still is in the market, but we've clearly seen a deceleration in grocery e-commerce growth, and I think some of those pandemic habits have come undone. So I guess to some extent, this has been driven by the cost of living crisis and the need to find better value, which of course in grocery that happens in stores rather than online.
Hmm.
But do you think this is perhaps a sign of a more permanent return to the store?
Yeah, I mean that is the big question, isn't it? And I don't know the answer. It's tricky. I mean, stores are sort of trying to be they're more fun places to visit now probably than they had been previously. Like, although you know lots of concessions have closed, and so on, and supermarkets are like thinking about things like other reasons to visit the store, like cafes and clothing ranges and that sort of thing, rather than just to go and get your food. But um, yeah, it's sort of like, will it survive when the cost of living crisis is over, whenever that might be? Um, will people think more, be more willing to pay a bit more on a delivery fee or higher prices online? I don't know. I don't know. I think surely the sort of macro trend is more online, surely. And rents for stores will always increase. So um, yeah, I think the biggest issue is the supermarkets haven't really nailed how to make online delivery profitable. So you know, through the pandemic, it was, well, this is a service we need to offer. Now it's like, why are we trying to encourage people to do this? It's much better if they come into the store.
Yeah. Yeah. During the pandemic, they had to divert their shoppers to their least profitable channel. So
Yeah,
I think
yeah,
they're happy when people come back to stores. So yeah, it
yeah.
is interesting.
I mean, the other one is the discounters. I mean, they don't have as big an online presence as the others. So you know, um, I don't know. I don't know. I don't feel like they will soon. They've no real good reason to. I don't think. But
And Aldi's
yeah,
actually rolling back on its click and collect service. I know
yeah,
they've stopped doing that in a number of stores. So I mean, maybe that's again a sign that it's just it costs too much to offer this kind of service, and it's not an integral part of their offering. People go to Aldi. I won't say for low prices, but value.
yeah,
Quality is a core component as well,
yeah.
and increasingly convenience. They're moving more into automation and self checkout. And I think was it in the Netherlands they've just they're trialing Scan and Go. I think it's the
Okay.
Netherlands. I'd have to double check that, but they're definitely experimenting with technology. But as you say, the economics of grocery e-commerce are a whole different ball game. So it's not easy.
Mm, yeah.
uh, just a couple more points. I just kind of wanted to share with listeners. I love this quote. It's a couple years old now, but this quote from Getir's managing director here in the UK. He says that what they're doing is they're democratizing the right to laziness. Now, there is a whole cohort of people who think that quick commerce is just represents this sort of dystopian future where we never need to leave our sofa again and everything just sort of turns up on our doorstep.
Yeah.
But I guess then there's another cohort of people who think actually this is just the reality of living in this on-demand era today. And I mean, so a phrase I used in the past was the milkman for the digital age. So I'm curious to get your views. Where do you sit? Do you think this is our dystopian future playing out right before our eyes?
Yeah. Well, so I spoke to Getir really early on, and the sort of talking about use cases, and one they spoke about was the sort of gamer who was in the middle of a 2 hour. I'm not a computer gamer, so I don't know, but in the middle of a tournament, they didn't want to take their eyes off the screen, but they wanted some Doritos or whatever. And yeah, that's sort of slightly dystopian, isn't it? But retail, it gets more convenient, and there was a time when we'd have to go to the greengrocer, then the butcher, then we had supermarkets, and now we have delivery, and why not? Like it should get more convenient. Online is a lot more convenient. So yeah, and it should, things will you'd hope like get delivered faster and faster. Amazon obviously changed the sort of set the standard on that. Deliveroo and Uber Eats, have made set that expectation for food delivery. I think that rapid grocers didn't quite reset the expectation to 10 minutes. I think 35 minutes is about right. Um, yeah, it's not dystopian. It's okay.
Progress.
Yeah, it's sort of,
Yeah.
we're getting more lazy, and why not? That's what
Yeah.
technology's for, isn't it?
It
That
is.
was
It
the
is. It's
promise.
about,
But yeah,
yeah, giving
but,
customers the choice,
yeah,
right?
right.
So whether you want to be lazy or not.
Yeah.
uh, the last thing I wanted to touch on was it's this, I think, relatively new, just in the past couple of weeks. Something that Uber Eats announced, and I'm putting you on the spot here because we didn't talk about this before. So
Mm.
we'll see how we go. But they announced that they are launching, and maybe you've already heard about this. They're launching a new AI-powered conversational shopping experience. Those are their words.
Mm.
So, just interested. I'm going to just read a little bit more about what this is, and then interested to get your thoughts because this definitely seems to be the way that things are moving. in terms of, AI-powered chatbots. I know Instacart's got their Ask Instacart feature, and Carrefour in France has also rolled out a similar initiative. So the Uber Eats one's interesting. So they say that later this year, consumers can chat with an AI assistant to explore new dishes and cuisines, to find deals on popular restaurants, and to easily reorder favorite meals to help save money and time. It will also help consumers meal plan, find sales on grocery items, and quickly order ingredients for their favorite recipes while sticking to a budget. So, yeah, do you think, I guess as more and more supermarkets come onto platforms like Uber Eats, I guess it becomes more important for them to stay on top of these latest technologies and continue to enhance and personalize that customer experience. So, putting you on the spot here, George, just curious to get some final thoughts on AI and quick commerce.
Yeah, I mean, it's whether that is a more convenient, better UX way to order food, and it might be for some people, and it might not be for others. I mean, when you go, if Friday night you're ordering a takeaway, you sort of know what you're after. You might browse a bit, but you're going to pick usually, the same one of 5 things that you have, all the time. Um, so to converse with an AI and say, oh, I fancy something spicy, I don't think people quite work that way. Things like, I want this type of meal, I'm allergic to these things, that sort of thing. Like that's a more interacting with the product, rather than having to like scroll and check out details. I think that's pretty positive. Um, yeah, I mean it's the same as like do people order shopping on their Amazon Alexa or Siri or I don't know? Like it's a fairly it's sort of I think it's still at a bit gimmicky stage at the moment. There is definitely for generative AI like a huge opportunity, I think, for food platforms in terms of. I mean, I was speaking to Deliveroo. They're sort of thinking about um, items that don't have a picture. So, a certain meal at a restaurant doesn't have a picture. Can we generate an image that sort of does look like what that would look like? Because images, people click more and buy more foodstuffs with pictures, things like
Ah,
that.
interesting.
Yeah, so I think that's more interesting, but definitely for sort of interrogating sort of sort of product details, I think it could be a good thing. But
Yeah.
I don't think we're at the change the world stage at the moment. Yeah,
Still early days.
yeah,
Fantastic. Well, listen, George, thank you so much for your time. It's been a pleasure chatting with you. And to our listeners, if you're interested in learning more about George and his work at The Grocer, he is very active on social media, and I will be sure to post some links in the show notes. That's all for today. Take care. Thank you for listening to Retail Disrupted. If you enjoyed this episode and would like to support the podcast, please leave a rating or review or share it with others. It really makes a difference.